A fresh row today, plans to stop homeless people sleeping in tents, described by the Home Secretary as a lifestyle choice.
Surely this is something that people do out of desperation, not out of choice.
We will help those who are genuinely homeless. It cannot be right that parts of our cities are ruined and blighted by the sight and use of tents. There is no need to use tents for accommodation in 21st century Britain.
Well, let's be clear on what the Home Secretary is doing here. She's shamelessly blaming and trying to criminalise the most vulnerable members of our society for the national shame of the abject failure of her own government. Many homeless families are now forced to live in tents as councils run out of temporary accommodation, and the Home Secretary knows it. A shocking new national homelessness study by Charity Crisis and Heriot-Watt University shows nearly 250,000 households in England are experiencing the worst form of homelessness, including sleeping on the streets. And yes, shockingly, that includes tents. And contrary to what the Home Secretary might think, that's not a lifestyle choice. It's called destitution. She might want to read the report. And perhaps while she's at it, she could also watch this report from ITV News.
In the search for cheaper properties, Stoke-on-Trent is one area London councils are sending tenants like Ben and Michaela. But there's a housing crisis here too, and the risks no less real. Ian and Teresa are living in a tent in a family member's garden. The family of four were given a no-fault eviction in June, but because they both work, they don't qualify for emergency accommodation, which would cost them £160 per night. The tent is their only option.
Renting, the costs are ridiculous, and then you've got people that are offering 6 months rent in advance, so they're going to have them rather than us. It's very competitive, which it wasn't a few years ago.
Obviously not getting much sleep in the tent and then go and work doing a 12-hour shift. I'm constantly tired, but it's just what I've got to do, isn't it?
How are new laws cracking down on tent use going to address rough sleeping? Instead of investing in housing benefits to make rents more affordable, the Home Secretary actually wants to criminalise and strip people of their own protection. It's just incomprehensible. It may be some homelessness is the result of people having complex needs such as addiction or mental health difficulties, but this is compounded by the fact that the safety net under this government has frayed to the point of breaking entirely, and there is now simply nowhere for people to go. And if all that's not bad enough, just a week ago a shocking new report from Joseph Rowntree Foundation found the number of people experiencing destitution in the UK has more than doubled in the last 5 years. Perhaps the Home Secretary would like to read that report too. Almost 4 million people experienced destitution in the UK last year. That means they were unable to meet their most basic needs, to stay warm, to stay dry, to stay clean and fed. It's a staggering 61% rise since 2019. And 1 million children are now living in destitute homes, an 88% rise since 2019. And what does the Home Secretary come up with? Banning tents from Britain's cities and finding charities who hand them out to the homeless. 13 years of Conservative government has left millions living in poverty and using food banks. 1 million adults in the UK can't even afford to eat every day. We've actually got GPs prescribing nutritional drinks to starving patients. Thousands being admitted to hospital every year with malnutrition. We've even seen the return of Victorian diseases. That's some legacy for a government which is now clearly detached from all reality.